You're listening to She Speaks, a Let Her Speak podcast that celebrates women's fearlessness, resiliency, and readiness to change the world.
I'm Shannon Hamaker, and I'm a relationship coach and sexual health educator, and also the host of Sexually Speaking with Shannon, a new podcast. And my word for the past 2 years would be intention.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a good one. That one's not, we've had a few words that have been a little more, I don't want to say dreary, but more like, went through some rough times type of stuff. And I feel like intention's a little bit more on the optimist side of things.
Yeah, I tend to lean that way, although there were some rough times for sure. So I don't want to discount that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when we left off talking a couple of years ago, and I know we had a really great conversation just about sexuality, women's sexuality, and I was really looking forward to having this conversation with you because at the time of us recording this, there is Roe v. Wade, and there's a lot up in the air right now, and there's a lot of turmoil and a lot of anger and frustration in the world that we didn't necessarily have to talk about 2 years ago, even though but that was not the topic that we were necessarily focused on. It was more just women's sexual awakening. So I can imagine that just in the last few weeks, there's possibly been a little bit of a transformation too for you.
There has, and it made me question, is what I'm doing impactful? So bringing a little more awareness and intention to what I'm doing and who I'm having conversations with, who I'm spending time with, and where is my time best spent. But when I think about the conversation that we had, a lot of the things that we talked about, talking to your kids about sex, and we didn't talk about modeling healthy relationship behavior, healthy, body image, or the way that you're treating yourself and treating your body. But I can see where some of the little tidbits of conversation all feed into being able to empower people to have a voice about their sexuality. And when it comes to that, I think that is so powerful when it comes to Roe v. Wade. Like what can we be in charge of? We can be in charge of ourselves. We can be in charge of how we respond and behave and interact with other people and guide them and model healthy relationships, both with ourselves and with other people. So absolutely, there has been a lot of thought. I've spent a lot of time, journaling and trying to figure out, planning my next workshops and planning how I coach people to make sure that they feel supported through this time and that they feel like they are in charge of their sexuality and how they're showing up.
So how have you, since we last talked, how has intention then come into all of the aspects of everything that you're doing now?
Intention showed up pretty close to when we spoke. There was a lot of conversation before where I was doing parties, Pure Romance Parties. It's a direct sales company. It's such a great platform for me to start from because I could model my own, I can mold it to how I wanted it to be. So I could volunteer for groups like, breast cancer survivors, or I could go do a presentation for pelvic floor specialists. But when it came down to it, it really was trying to focus on sales and building a team. And that's, direct sales. That's kind of how that was. And during that time, I was struggling with my own marriage. And I was thinking, okay, lubricants and vibrators and blindfolds and even date night card games are not cutting it. My husband was struggling with some depression. And from that, we started to explore a little bit deeper. Okay, we've been together for 16 years at the time, or 15 years. How did we end up in this monotonous relationship where we started out really close and we had all this chemistry, but over time, life just built a wedge and we didn't have intention around our relationship to prioritize it and protect it. And it was the most important thing. And so I started going to therapy. He started going to therapy. We started doing our own research separately and realizing how much codependency we had in that relationship. So I really took I took our relationship under our microscope, and I looked at how I was showing up and where I was saying, I wish you would do this, or I wish you would do that, or if this would just happen. And ultimately I found that I had a lot more control and a lot more responsibility for my part of the relationship, and being able to say, if I want my partner to do something, who is the partner on the other side of that, and how can I show up the best possible person to be in relationship with? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good.
I'm thinking through how that applies to my own marriage with my husband. I mean, we've only been together for about 3 years now, but I was thinking through the exact same thing, everything that you're talking about.
Right. Yeah. And it just was so fascinating to me that we started out with this rom-com kind of relationship where people were like, oh, that like couples goals that was not a hashtag. There weren't even hashtags when we met. But at the same time, people were like, oh my gosh, you guys are so fun. You always have a great time together. I wish I had a relationship like that. And you can only ride on those fumes of chemistry and excitement and, newlywed kind of feel for so long before other things will start to seep into your marriage that you don't even realize. And that, in my experience, I shouldn't say that happens to everyone, but, during COVID, I found that a lot of people were like, okay, what else? What else? I know lubricants are good. I know a date night is good, but what else? What else is going on? And a lot of these women have been having parties with me, or, they're friends of mine that were approaching this perimenopause age of 40. And they were like, there's something else. There's something else. I feel disconnected from my partner. I feel like the kids have been at the center of our relationship. They've been the priority. We're scooting them off to gymnastics and this and that. And I just feel lost. And so that became my new mission, was trying to help people intuitively know what their values were, and having a conversation with their partner to be able to have like guideposts of where they wanted their relationship to go and what else is there. Because most of the times it hasn't been, and this was in the last podcast too, I said, it's not just a low libido, it's high boredom, because we've been prescribed this way of being in relationship and having a marriage, but there's like a whole nother world. But sometimes people are afraid to talk about it because it's risque or it's kinky. And some people are like, I don't care, I'm going to talk about it. And so I'm slowly but surely trying to peel away from my own insecurities to be able to speak up for other people and, guide them through coaching and workshops and retreats and on my podcast, and just trying to get the word out.
Yeah. And I know we talked about, in the South and also in the Midwest, that it's even more so just something you don't talk about, or that you're not given permission to even have those types of desires or thoughts. And so you never ask for it. Mm-hmm. And I remember us talking about that part too, of like part of some of the issues of women just feeling so unsatisfied is that, for one thing, they don't even know what they like, and they don't necessarily know or feel comfortable asking for it.
Yes, both.
Yeah.
Both. I'm finding both. And to give someone permission to say, no, what do you want? Because I would often, and still do, how can I make him feel better? How can sex be better for him? Or how can I make it go quicker? Or how it's a very watered down version of what sexuality was created for. I mean, it's at the foundation of spirituality and connection to other people. And I'm finding how just when you tap into that, like the personal growth space I have been in for, 20 years, my whole life, I feel like I've wanted to know more, learn more, go different places. And the most impactful personal growth has been through my own sexuality journey. So taking time for myself, and I know I didn't kind of go through what my husband and our journey, but it I kind of said, let's put our intimacy on hold because I'm not sure what's going on. And I want to create space to be able to figure it out and stop putting demands on each other and stop assuming that the expectations of what a marriage looks like based on our culture is going to apply for us, because I feel like we can create our relationship. We've always done things a little bit differently than other people. So why can't we do that with our sex life? Why can't we do that with our relationship? And why can't we do that with parenting? And then it just kind of has that ripple effect. So we literally press pause on our marriage for a little bit. Like, I love you in the most compassionate way. I love you where you're at right now. And I know this is where we're at on our journey. And I want to be able to take some time to figure out for myself. So that looked like, looking at what brought me pleasure and what brought me joy, and really intuitively checking in with my body to see what felt like a hell yes and what felt like a no thank you. And I'm talking about, business and kids sports and like anything that was presented to me. And I'm typically someone that's like, yeah, I would overcommit and then burn out. And, my poor husband or my kids would get the short end of the deal when I would show up with 40% of my energy left. And so to be able to press pause and to be forced to do that through quarantine and COVID was a huge gift. So that, and I know not everybody gets this gift. And that's why now that I've received that gift, I'm trying to connect with others and give back through this awareness of how sexuality can look for people and how it can give them life and how it can help them in their business and in their personal life, no matter, what size, shape, color, creed, all of that. So yeah, pressing pause on our relationship was super helpful, and being able to just kind of come together and check in and say, this is what I'm noticing, and how can I support you? Do you need my support? Do you need me to listen to a vent session? What's going on? And I know it's been over the course of 2 years, so it's hard to put it in a nutshell, but based on that experience and being certified in a Sex and Love Co. It's a certification for coaching, and being guided through that experience has helped me be able to provide this service to others.
So how did your husband react to all of it? Was it something that it was a mutual agreement, or was it one of you spoke up first, or what? How did that kind of coming together and in agreement about what needed to happen in your marriage happen?
I came to him, and oftentimes in relationships, there's one person that is a little more like the doer and then the beer, and it can shift. But at that time, I was doing so much and trying to drag him along, for the lack of a better term, like, come on, we'll beat this depression. Because he was struggling, he was struggling mental health wise. And so I would try to encourage, I would try to schedule appointments for him, do whatever I could. So to him, I said, I'm going to press pause because I want to show up. I want to be the best that I can be. And I want to be, I wrote out like, what does my future marriage look like? And to do that, what are the steps I need to take to get there? And so it was very clear. And I actually read this very descriptive, future version of us. We're traveling, we're having fun, we're intimate consistently, we feel connected. And at that time, it sounded like the most asinine thing. But I just knew, like, I could see it, and I wrote it in present tense. We are on vacation and we're doing this, and I'm giving you the space to make the choices that are best for you. And so when I presented that to him, it kind of was like, okay, cool. It was not met with, oh my gosh, thank you so much. I've been waiting for you to say that. It was just like, great. I hope this really happens. And he was not in a space to be able to have like a big conversation about it. So That's how it went the first time. And then over the course of 2021 and us doing our work, we would continually just meet back up and have these conversations. So in March of 2021, we had the tough decision of, do we stay together? Where are we at right now? I love you. I want you to be the best dad that you can be to our boys. And I feel like if we don't figure this out, it's just going to be passed on to them. That generational trauma is strong because a lot of the patterns of behavior, despite how we swore we would never be like our parents, it was loud and clear when I parsed it, when I took it apart and I looked at it under a microscope, like, I wonder where I learned this. And it's very easy to trace back. And now that we have the resources that we do, and being in this relationship, field and having the time to be able to do the work on my own, to create that for ourselves and then also give it back to others was just such an amazing journey. But on the front end, it was scary. It was scary. So when I presented that to him and I said, do we stay together? Or do you get a place and you work on yourself on your own? Like, whatever, I love you no matter what. So I'm here to support you, but this can't stay like this. I don't think that either of us are going where we could be. And that was kind of a result of reading How to Do the Work by the holistic psychologist. I highly recommend that book because it's in layman's terms, just how your brain works and how your nervous systems gets hijacked sometimes, and how you can take control of your nervous system and work through it. So that was kind of the place where we decided, do we jump in or do we jump out and get separate places? And we both just said, we're jumping in. Let's do this. Let's do this together, but also apart. Like he would say, what do I do? And I was like, well, this is your journey. I'll give you some ideas. And so he started doing breath work, and I had been doing breath work to help regulate my emotions. And, what else do we do? Well, I'm going to hire a coach, or I'm going to go to therapy. There's so many different resources out there to help people. And ultimately, through that journey, we are now a year out. And if you listen to my podcast, we did kind of a year wrap up, and how drastically different 1 year was with just having that intention of putting our marriage first and meeting at least once a week, if not once every other week, to check in with each other and talk about priorities for the week and what are our values. And there's a lot of times where we would get dysregulated or fall back into old patterns, but we were able to both be on the same page and pull each other out of that quicker than before we would let the big divide happen again.
Wow, that's just amazing. The whole journey that you both went on, and just how respectful and loving you were about it. I know that it's not every marriage is the same. And sometimes I can understand from either, the person who's like done some of the work already or knows a little bit more about it, that it can sometimes get difficult to have buy-in from someone, especially if you have a spouse who's a very skeptical type of person of like I'm thinking, my husband's a scientist. And so he's extremely logic driven, like very, very logic driven. The woo-woo, warm and fuzzy stuff is not his thing. That's never been his thing. So I'm just thinking about like how I would have to approach and I've approached conversations like this with him, and like I understand how I need to communicate it to him. But to have a spouse that you both agree, like things are difficult, but we're willing to work on this, and we're willing to give each other space to do that, is just an amazing piece to what a real relationship looks like.
Right. And I love that you point that out, that he's not typically the woo-woo person. And so that's something that I get from a lot of my coaching clients too. And you are such a great example of creating community so that you don't rely solely on your husband. How much would that drive him nuts, right?
Oh, no. That was a part of our agreement when we got married, was like, we have our own lives and we have our together lives. And that's what works for us.
That's what works for everyone, I think, but sometimes people have a hard time understanding what that means. And the codependency is more rampant than we're aware of. Like, how do I make my partner feel better? Or how do I help him with his depression, or help him with his alcohol, and setting parameters and doing all of that. That is exhausting for both partners. And I just want to encourage those that are listening to look, like, one of the things that I look at first with my people is who's your support squad? A therapist, a spiritual guide, your friends. And sometimes those friends that you've been friends with for a long time, they may not be a support guide right now. They may be on their own journey, like those high school friends that are kind of exploring their own like life challenges. And I'm speaking from experience in that I've got such a great group of friends that have been friends for a long time, since college. But during this time, I actively sought out, like, who else is trying to grow? Who else has a really good partnership? Who else has a really good sex life? And they're willing to share some information with me. And who are the people that I'm following on Instagram? And just being very intentional about these people, because I know that one of my characteristics is I can easily be distracted. I'm not diagnosed ADD, but that plus perimenopause, you start to get a little more brain fog, and clarity can be a little more challenging. And if you're not sleeping well, that can be challenging. So knowing that I am a little more vulnerable, who am I going to say yes to, and who am I going to say no to? And that became very clear the more I looked at it and the more I felt it.
Mm-hmm. So, and I have fortunately a lot of friends around me who talk about feeling in the body, but I would love for you, because I know not everyone is as fortunate as me to have a lot of good friends that have done this work and are researching it and have read the books, written the books. But what does that mean by being able to feel something in your body?
Well, feelings are apparently, this is a new discovery of mine over the past 2 years. You mentioned how I can be optimistic at the beginning. And sometimes I was the overly optimistic or toxic optimistic, where instead of feeling the feelings and using them as a guide, I would say, let's go on vacation. We'll go skiing this weekend, or we'll just run away from it, or we'll drink. That's one big thing that I stopped doing during this time as well. July of 2020, I stopped drinking alcohol so that I could have the feelings, work through them, and try to figure out what they're trying to tell me. So feeling the feelings is a start, because it's a start to feeling in your body. It is learning that they're there for a reason. Like, if you're feeling frustrated or resentful, that's usually a red flag that there's maybe an expectation or a boundary you didn't set. If someone has stepped into your energy space, or taking advantage of you, what parameters do you just need to make sure are clear up front? I love Brene Brown and how she says clear is kind. Mm-hmm. And that can be a very good motto to, like, am I being clear enough? And if not, okay, then the ownership's on me, and no one else is in charge of how I respond or feel about this. So feeling the feelings, like naming it. And then, like, if you're feeling, one thing I do with my clients is we look at limiting beliefs and where those come from, and isolating, like closing your eyes. And, if you feel like, can you think of an experience recently where you were frustrated or frazzled, or, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So
yeah.
we can do this on the spot. So if you close your eyes.
Okay.
And if you breathe in through your nose and just clear out some of the breath, like take a deep breath and fill up your belly. I'll do it with you. Filling up your belly and then exhaling just a little out through the mouth. And you're thinking about that feeling that you felt the last time that you were frustrated.
Mm-hmm.
Can you isolate where you feel it in your body?
Yeah, I think it feels like it's in my gut.
In your gut.
Yeah.
And is there a shape to it or a color?
It seems like it's a cube.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like it's like a golden color.
A golden cube.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Maybe it's not linked to Mario. I've not been playing Mario lately.
That might be something you want to journal about, Catherine.
Maybe.
But isolating that feeling, like where is it showing up in your belly, and then paying attention to it. And you can do this at home if you're listening. And when you pay attention to it and call attention and see like, what is it? What's it trying to tell me? Sometimes just the attention on it will make it dissipate. Mm-hmm. You know, and you can go back to a time where you felt that feeling before and connect those times together. So it definitely helps to have someone that's experienced to guide you through this. Or gosh, there's so many YouTube videos, and, you know, you can type in feeling in your body or, what did we say? Being in touch with your body.
Oh, yeah.
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 Being in touch with your body.
Yeah.
You know, just Google search some of these things and you'll see things. And chances are it may feel weird at first, probably should if you haven't done it before. But if you can get past that feeling, then you'll be able to find some new places that you didn't know and expand your emotional awareness of how things trigger you. And when that happens, you know, being able to just take some deep breaths and settle your nervous system can be super helpful. Yeah, so that's one way. The other way is I'm helping people do more by doing less. You know, being more by doing less is being more doing less is really the best way to describe it, because, you know, our world or our society is really, it's a very masculine energy society. Mm-hmm. So we're doing. And a lot of women have not had a chance to be. And if you think about like feminine, masculine energy, it doesn't have anything to do with gender. There's feminine, masculine energy, like dark and light, night and day. There's even like a glass. If you like, this cup has very masculine energy because it's holding the water, which is like the feminine energy. Mm-hmm. I hope I'm not losing people. They're like, what? But feminine energy is flowing and creative and expansive, and being able to recognize when, you know, for example, in my marriage, I was being very masculine, like, come on, let's go, let's do this. I'm going to do all the appointments and schedule the things. And I'm also a business owner, and the company that I worked for was very doing based, like sales, numbers, figure out how you get there. And to just be was very uncomfortable for me. Like I was the person that would say, oh, I'm more of a high energy workout person, not a yoga person. But if you've ever done like yoga with Adrienne on YouTube, or just sat in the morning with your palms open up and just breathe, at first it was so uncomfortable. But the more I do it, the easier it has gotten to be able to be a part of my morning routine. And that's something what I encourage people to do when I coach them, is learning how to breathe. And it's so funny. I get so many people that are like, oh, I'm not a yoga person. Oh, I don't like loud breath. I don't like, there's just a lot of resistance. But I'm like, okay, well, let's see, like do it a couple times, see what happens. And some people are like, oh my gosh, I love, like, I'll just breathe all the time. Just intentionally breathe. So that's super helpful. And then also learning to trust your intuition. So if you have a uterus and you're still menstruating, one of the biggest things that has been so helpful to trust your body and to trust your intuition has been to check in with your menstrual cycle and to be able to track what is going on, and learning that there's seasons of the menstrual cycle, just like there's seasons of fall, summer, spring, winter. and understanding that your energy is very distinct in every single type of season through your menstrual cycle. So today you offered me several different options, and I knew that I'm moving from my spring to summer phase. So I knew that I would be a little more energetic. I would be a little more communicative. So I look at my schedule and I will plan things around it. So if I'm not in a space where I'm going to be very good at networking, which is during usually that like PMS phase is what we know it, or that fall phase where you want to turn inward, then I'm just going to graciously decline, because if it's going to deplete my energy, I'm not going to be any good at the things I have to do for my family or my business. And also, being able to schedule things like podcasts on my own, or videos or reels or whatever I'm doing. I look at my schedule before I commit to it. And even when I look at my kids' schedule and I look at baseball tournaments, and there's some that I don't go to. And for some people that have kids in sports, they're either gasping right now. They're like, what? You miss a game or you miss a whole tournament? I do. Because if I'm not worth anything the next week, it's just not going to be worth my time at all to go and be miserable. And it's funny because I'll say to my son he plays competitive baseball, I'll say, like, do you care if I miss this weekend? I feel like I need to stay at home and get some things done. He's like, yeah, I don't care as long as I get to play baseball. In the end, there's a lot of pressure for those that have kids in sports. There's a lot of pressure for not just us to go to like tournaments and stuff, but also to like watch them practice. It's so bizarre to me because I did not grow up that way. My parents would drop me out for a weekend swim meet and be like, how'd you do?
My parents were pretty similar. Yeah.
How'd it go? Great. That's it.
Yeah.
That's all we got. So those are some of the ways that I help, but the menstrual cycle has been huge. And for my perimenopausal people, as they're moving into menopause, one of the best things that you can do is learn about your energy and learn about your menstrual cycle and track it. And also the best thing for a marriage is for you to let your partner know. My husband and I meet every week, and I'll be like, hey, just so you know, I'm heading into my fall phase, and that means I'm not going to have as much energy. So do you mind taking, the kids to practice? Or do you mind if I take a nap a couple days this week? Whatever I need. It's like you can talk about it, and there's that expectation there, and it's fine.
Yep. I do that with my husband. If I know I'm getting close to the date, sometimes I'll mention to him of like, just so you know, I'm going to be starting soon. So I'm going to be probably a little grumpy, and I'm not going to want to cook anything at home. So we're going to go out to eat a lot. I'm just going to be very tired. And he's like, okay, cool. That sounds good.
That's great.
Yeah.
I always say I'm a little more emphatic about my delivery. Very clear and like assertive.
Yeah, very assertive.
Wrapping things up before. Yeah.
Yep.
But that's been huge, especially with business owners too. Being able to tap into that and know, like, it's okay if you say no to a networking event. It's okay if you didn't do that thing on that day that you did schedule because your body wasn't ready for it. And it's almost like I felt like I was swimming upstream before, trying to keep up with a lot of the doers and a lot of the people that are just, go. And then to just be like, oh, I'm just going to settle into this. It's been so great for everyone in our household. There's so much more access to joy and there's so much more time for us to spend together. And it just really has made such a difference.
I always equate that of being more by doing less, similar to like you have so many ways that you can invest, right? And so if you're investing in all of these different things that are like, I'm like a stock market kind of person. So I'm always thinking about like, if I'm totally investing everything in penny stocks, then I'm not going to get, it's the blue chip stuff that are really important, that if I'm there, it will pay much greater dividends. But if I am going to all these little tiny things that are like penny stocks, it's like, I'm pretty sure I'm going to lose every time, because there's just no reward for the risk that I'm giving to myself or to my family for going to something like that, and it just not being able to feel like I can be a part of, the important moments for a little while.
Right.
Yeah.
I think you just helped me with a financial decision.
Oh, there you go.
Tie that together. So what are the things that you invest in your life? Like, what's important to you and your husband?
Typically, one of my big things is I really cannot stand having my phone around me on the weekends. And most of my friends who text me on the weekends can attest to this, of like, you text me on like Saturday afternoon, you might not hear from me until Monday morning.
Wow.
Because I notice when I start getting really bad about it, like right now I've actually gotten kind of bad about doing that. And I've noticed a complete change in just my wellness and my mental health, of like, I need to just put that stupid phone away and just walk away from it and just be with my husband and my dog and enjoying whatever we're doing. So that's one of my big things that I notice immediately when I fade away, and then I have to go back and make sure and check and keep myself in check on that one. Another big one is I'm very meticulous about evening things. Mm-hmm. So if I don't absolutely feel like I need to be there, my evenings are strictly for the husband and for the dog, and just also decompressing from the whole day. Because normally, I'm running around having meeting after meeting. So mm-hmm. I need to just like watch a TV show, or I need to like sit outside for a little while, as long as it's not 120 degrees and 100% humidity like it is right now. But those are my big things. It's just more so of like, I guard my time, and like my Mondays and my Fridays, I usually bookend. Mm-hmm. So I usually only do meetings Tuesday through Thursday, unless there's a reason that I really need to do something on Monday or Friday for meetings.
So it sounds like being fully present.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And having downtime.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. And that is very clear, I'm sure, when you're making your schedule. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. The options, I'm very meticulous about options that I give to people mm-hmm. for my time, mm-hmm. If they ask for it. And, I'm not generally going to be someone that will fit you in with 24 hours notice. Mm-hmm. That's just because I've mentally prepared myself for what my week's going to look like. And so I know myself well enough to know, unless it's an emergency, like that conversation can probably wait until next week.
These are all great tips for even me. I wish I would have had that much clarity when I was 3 years into my marriage. But for people that aren't as clear as you, being able to sit down and say what's important, and having that, those values that you can move from, can help so much with that intention piece. And we did that last fall. We did like a little 2-day retreat on our own in Nashville. We just got an Airbnb, and we just went through and we talked about parenting, and we talked about, our values, and we decided that experiences over things was important. We decided that compassion and our health were all the 3 things. So the kids are somewhat annoyed, but I like to think that someday they'll look back and be like, oh, we should come up with that, that they know that that's something that's important to us. Because when it came to Christmas, they didn't have as many things under their tree, but they did have some experiences that we had. We went to a Braves game because the one kid likes baseball, and so really being able to say, oh, we don't have enough presents. Oh, but we decided that experiences are the most important thing, and things are not. So yeah, that's those are just a couple of tips of being able to tune into what's important and also to your body. Because when you start to feel like, I'm guessing that when you don't have your downtime, or if your phone is starting to get out of control, you feel it in your body.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been feeling it most of this week of just like, oh, I need to just detach this thing from me for a little while.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're heading into the weekend where you'll be able to do that.
Yeah. And I love that approach though, too, of, it's just like building a business or building an organization of like, you need to have set values that doing that for a family. I think it's something that most families, even those that have like an entrepreneur in it, which, usually in entrepreneur world, we're always talking about mission, vision, values. You need to have a mission, vision, value. But we forget that framework can apply very easily into a family and into a marriage and into your personal, way that you are presenting yourself in the world and the way you're interacting with the world. And I think a lot of people forget, I forget that that can be applied in almost every aspect, not just in a business or in a nonprofit.
Definitely. Especially when it comes to kids and you're trying to model the behavior that you hope that they will, or model something that they'll pick up on, with our relationship. And even with my son who's 14, he's got a girlfriend now. And so just saying things like, what is it? What do you think a healthy relationship looks like? And, in the first podcast that we did, we talked about the song, the WAP song.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And how we had a conversation around that. And that still continues. I mean, there's so much that he watches and listens to. Like, we recently talked about how if there's like a degrading term that he hears in a rap song about a woman, to replace it with queen. And so we talked about that. He was like, okay, queen, and so we would say it and we're laughing. I was like, so what do you think a king looks like? Like when you're with somebody, you look up to each other and you are compassionate with each other and you want the best for that person. And they're like your person. So what does that look like? And also talking about how dating now doesn't have to be a bad thing when a breakup happens, let's be honest, so I had a conversation with him about like, you're probably going to have a lot of girlfriends and all of them you're going to like for a really like multitude of reasons. And they're all wonderful people. So just remember that, like with dignity, when you break up and how some people get really mad and it's natural to feel kind of sad about it, but hurting the other person isn't going to make it any better. And sending pictures of someone doesn't make it any better. So remembering that. And he's like, yeah, okay. So it's fun to just keep carrying these things on. And sometimes there's a total blank stare. So I'm not met with like, wow, Mom, you're so amazing. Thank you.
I'm sure most parents of teenagers would call you out if you were claiming that was happening every time.
Totally. Yeah. But it doesn't have to be the other way either. It doesn't have to be that teenagers are the worst. I think they're so amazing. Like, it's so fun to hang out with teenagers and hear their perspectives on things and how it can shine a light on some things that we thought were true, but maybe aren't so true. And just having those conversations with them, it's so fun.
I always, so my nephew is, he's 21, he's about to be 22. And so like groups of teenagers, sometimes they can be a little annoying. I'm just going to say that if it's just them and nobody else. But the thing I loved most was because, I was there the day he was born. I held him in the hospital. And when he became a teenager, it was like, I really got to start to see who is Jacob. Like what human is he? How does he think about things? Because he was starting to be able to at least develop the vocabulary and the communication that I really got to see, like, possibly what kind of an adult he was going to become, which is a really, really cool thing. I mean,
It's so fun.
I mean, the fights were starting with his dad, which happens when you're a teenager.
Yeah.
And, you and your dad usually butt heads, even though he and his dad are so similar. And I think it frustrates both of them that they're kind of the same person. But that's one thing that I think went through the frustration of raising teenagers that is a little bit of that that silver lining, is that you get to start seeing who are these humans becoming, and the role that you played in helping that human become who they're going to be.
Yeah, and that they are their own person.
Yeah.
And giving them that space to make decisions that you may not always think are the best decision, but letting them learn from those lessons.
Yeah.
And I'm glad he's got an Aunt Catherine to go to. And I encourage people, my sons have a few aunts that they can go to and an uncle as well, but having that adult, that trusted adult that they can have conversations with, that they don't feel comfortable, because I don't expect my kid to have, be totally open with me about everything. But to be able to have like a sounding board that is a little bit older, a little bit cooler, and to, help have some guidance and a little mentorship going on.
Yeah. I think that is such a huge thing, either like an older cousin or an aunt or uncle. I think can make a huge, huge difference too. Plus it helps like if you're a parent, because that person can at least somewhat discreetly mention to you, like, just so your child is going through this. So just to help you prepare for how to approach certain things, or to give perspective of how they might be reacting to things. And you have this context.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So helpful. Give me all the thoughts and perspectives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one thing that I really wanted to make sure that I pointed out, because I think it's such an important thing sometimes for, especially women, to see as part of your journey, because like direct sales companies get a huge bad rap, and especially women in particular get a huge pushback on joining a direct sales group, and sometimes they can be very predatory, and depending on what one you join and things like that, but that you've managed to connect to something else within yourself, and it allowed you to explore that, I think is an important aspect, because there's so many like anti-MLM groups out there. There's so many people that just bash constantly. And there's a lot of not necessarily hatred, but a lot of judgment in that space.
Yeah.
Especially even among other women, women that are in one, women that aren't, but not to say, necessarily the general of, is it a good thing to join or not? But it's more of that you found something that unlocked a passion in you, and you took that and you morphed it into, with intention, this is what I'm going to do. But it did help light a fire, that it wasn't just about having a side hustle for money. And you recognize when it started to be more about selling, and not the intention of what you really wanted to do, and how you transitioned into that, I think is something that you don't hear a whole lot about.
I know. I'm so glad you brought that up, because that has been a topic of gosh, yeah, it's come up a lot lately, especially with the LuLaRoe documentary that shed some light. And I'm conflicted, because I wouldn't be where I'm at without Pure Romance. And, I'm still technically a consultant, but I've stepped down from leadership. I'm not doing trainings anymore, so I can make more space for coaching. But the training that they had, and they've been around for almost 30 years, and I'm not trying to like you said, like get anybody to join or anything, but really just it's goes back to that duality. Like I didn't bring duality up at all, but goes back to duality for me. There's both, and like there's like some flow to it. There's not a yes or a no, or a good or a bad. There's like, how does this fit into my life for me? And I've always kind of, dance to my own rhythm when it comes to how I did the parties. I've always been sexual health focused, but I've always looked at it like I was a realtor for 5 years. There's a lot of bad realtors. There's a lot of bad lawyers. There's a lot of bad everything. But the fact that some women, like in Grover, Colorado, population of 200 people, that can hop on and buy a little business in a box and be smarter and have some, should she choose, should she do the training, that type of thing, and have some products in her hand that might make her relationship better. I've just never seen a problem. I haven't, maybe me being the optimist again, but it's when people lose themselves or try to, buy a bunch of inventory and then don't support it with the sales. I don't know. I've been conflicted with that since that documentary came out. And sometimes, just in general, but overall, I'm grateful for the opportunities that they've had and the fact that they've been around for a long time. I know the founder and the president and CEO very well. I know their intentions are good. They have 2 nonprofits. One is for sexual health research for women, and then the other one is it's for trans kids and support for their family. So I don't know that you had a question about that, but to me, it is conflicted, and I think encouraging people to really look at before you jump on board the all direct sales are bad train or all XYZ are bad train for that matter. Like whatever label you put on something and claim it to be horrible or bad, look at it real close and be like, does it really matter? Do I need to jump on that train? Or can I just sit here and observe what it is for what it is? And I guess I'll leave it at that. But yeah, I'm forever grateful for the opportunity that it has given me. And it's too bad that some people's experiences or that some people have been predatory, because it really is such a great opportunity for some people, especially when it's not based off of that, building a team type of deal.
Yeah, your downline type of...
Yeah, like if someone's not doing what they're telling you to do, that's a red flag. Because the way that Pure Romance is set up, it's like, you still got to do the thing, and ultimately that's why I was like, I can't do the thing anymore. I'm on to this next part of my journey. And for some people, it is their end journey. And for others, it's like a step into something else. And it's been fun, like seeing some of these women become a sex therapist or start their own business or become coaches or just like all these different things that I don't know that they would have had access to otherwise.
Yeah. And that's the main thing. I just wanted the others, another story around it, because you do predominantly hear the negative and, with the LuLaRoe, and there's other documentaries with like Amway and Herbalife and all of those that you predominantly hear the really negative ones. And there's absolutely predatory things that happen in that space, but there's also opportunities that a lot of women and men might not have been given because they've never owned a business in their life, or they don't have because predominantly a lot of quite a few entrepreneurs get started because they came from an entrepreneur family. And so those that get started early, they had that in their family. And so there's a huge amount of people who don't have that opportunity and that privilege, that sometimes the best route for them to go is through this.
Right.
And from that, then they start realizing other opportunities and they grow, from that. And so it's not always, I just want to make sure that people understand it's not always a bad thing.
Yeah. I appreciate you doing that, because not many people, and I mean, ultimately, when you're looking at the connections that one company has, like, they're connected to Indiana University, and they've got all these OBGYNs and all these doctors that are coming to them for resources, and the people that they had, we had Elizabeth Gilbert come and speak to us, and trans folks that came and talked to us. So the access to the information and training that they have has been so worth it, and it's such little cost. And the umbrella of having someone that's like, here, I've designed all this stuff that you can post on your website, or I've got, it's been tried and true, the ability to have access to that, and the community too, back to community, like the relationships that you can build with other people that still, even as you move into your next phase of life, having connections all over to be able to, just chat with and support each other is just such a gift from that as well. And not everybody has access to that. And I think that's what that comes down to. So I really appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, no problem. I like bringing in different perspectives, because I think when we start getting like, torches and pitchforks about a specific group, it's like, well, not everybody in that is necessarily not everybody's LuLaRoe.
Right.
It's not everything that you see in the documentaries. There's others that have really helped people, and they just didn't have the same leg up that some other people have had to start their own businesses.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
So the last thing that I wanted to talk about, considering it is very much in the moment, going back to Roe v. Wade, but a different aspect for Roe v. Wade. And it's related to sexuality, and it's related to like sexual desire. But one aspect of things that I could foresee happening is women being so terrified that even if they do want to get pregnant, that it could be ectopic or it could become life-threatening, that I could foresee a lot of women basically to some degree going backwards, of not embracing their own sexual desires for fear that they are putting their life at risk. Do you have any sort of message or anything around that?
You are responsible for your own pleasure. That would be like, no one else is out there to give you orgasms. I feel like understanding your body and how it was designed for pleasure. Like, the clitoris has 8,000 to 10,000 nerve endings in it. It doesn't age. It's the only part of the human body that's made for pleasure. So speaking specifically to those that do have vulvas, spend some time with yourself. It will most likely be uncomfortable, but understanding how your body works will help give you a stronger voice, and understanding what your, I call it home, and I'm putting, for those that are listening, I'm putting my hands on my belly. Like, I can tell. Actually, last night we were at trivia night at the River and Rail Theater. Little plug for them. They're doing some amazing work next year. There are 5 plays that they released for this season, and everyone was laughing because I'd be like, "Hold on," and I would instinctively try to find the answer to one of the trivia questions by putting my hands over my belly. And most of the time I was right. And little things like that, as silly as it may seem, will add to a foundation of trusting yourself and trusting your voice, and knowing that you have, I think that there are going to be resources that are coming out of the woodwork. I'm already hearing about, resources, both like mental health resources, sexuality, people that are helping women that are forced to have these pregnancies that they don't want. But, it goes back to you. So you're responsible for your own pleasure. I hope that it's not the backslide that some people are projecting. I hope it's a blip. And in the meantime, I hope it helps give us focus on what is important, especially since Tennessee is number 10 in teenage pregnancies. And we have very minimal, bleak, comprehensive sex ed. Like, we're just talking about the basic anatomy. And that is of 2 years ago in Knox County that they redid the health education. So if you are a parent or you have kids in your life, I would encourage you to learn alongside them. I think I did in that first podcast as well. Learn alongside. If you don't have the resources, look to give me a call, message me. I will send you the resources that you can look into to help guide not only yourself but your kids through this challenging time. And I just like if you are someone that is really challenged by the thought of all these unwanted pregnancies, the social service field is going to be slammed because guess what? It already is. That's what I came from before I worked on my own. And there were kids that were talking about having sex with their teenage boyfriends because then they would have a little baby that would love them forever. So if you can volunteer or get involved with youth somehow and being an advocate for sexual wellness, sexual health, comprehensive sex ed, I think that's where dispelling a lot of myths is going to happen.
Mm-hmm. I will say, I do hope it's a blip too. I really do hope. I think one thing, if you could say something positive that came out of something horrible, is that I think it really did light a bit of a fire with men to take more ownership, but also educate themselves because, for the at least not, I think we didn't talk about this specifically, but growing up, I mean, women barely learned about their own bodies, let alone a guy learning about a woman's body. Mm-hmm. And I think it started opening up those conversations of the ownership for, a partner. And their place in it, and the decision, and helping more men understand what women go through, both in the turmoil of wanting to be pregnant and can't, or not, something, or getting pregnant when neither of them are ready or wanting to, or woman being forced to continue, a daughter being forced, someone who's effectively a child being forced and being the father of that daughter. I think it's opened up, more of those stories to be shared in a more open way, rather than them being, swept under the carpet,
Yes.
so to speak.
Yeah.
So if it's not necessarily that I wouldn't want this to be the way that it had to happen, mm-hmm. but I am at least glad that it did spark. And I hope that it's something that doesn't get forgotten about, even if, things do, quote unquote, go kind of back to the way that it was, that doesn't change.
Right.
That conversation keeps going.
I agree. Yeah. I feel like in my experience, I noticed that after the Me Too movement, there was a lot of like, oh gosh, okay, I'm not really sure what to say or do. So I'm just going to be over here and you let me know. There's a lot of timid, like mm-hmm. I actually had women that were like, I just want my husband to just take me and throw me on the bed and use it. Like that masculine energy kind of dissipated into a, like, I don't know what to do with this. And now we need that safe, that whole, that masculine energy to stand up and hold us and give us the floor and give us the space and let us cry and know it's going to be okay. And let us do the things that we need to do and feel supported. And that looks different than how most couples have been acting. I don't know about most couples, but in my experience, the couples that I'm trying to help, it's challenging because it's changing those generational behavior patterns and relationship patterns. And so it's switching it up a little bit, mm-hmm. but we definitely need, this is a collective effort. It's not just the women fighting for this. It's everyone. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's the humans. We all need to come together for it.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. So thank you so much, Shannon, for the candidness, the honesty, everything that you shared. I hope that has given more people permission to be very open and candid, whether it's with their partners or at least with themselves. So for people who want to connect with you and to listen to your podcast, what are the best ways for them to connect with you and follow you?
The podcast is on all the platforms, and it's Sexually Speaking with Shannon. And I am Shannon Hamaker on Instagram, and I'm sure you'll link it.
Yes, I will.
And those are the two best places to find me. And then my website is shannonhamaker.com, where you can hear the workshops and retreats and coaching that I'm doing. I do online workshops and in-person workshops. Talk to parents about how to talk to your kids about sex, and magic midlife retreats and things like that. So go check it out.
Okay. Thank you. I love the whole transformation that happened over the last, I think, like we were talking before we started recording, that you noticed that you had all of these inklings that were present, but you weren't fully aware of them the last time that we talked. So I think that's really cool that we got to at least record it, and you got to actually notice it in hindsight that, oh, it was all there. I just hadn't quite put it all together yet.
Well, I love this project. I think it's such an amazing, I don't know, just another way that you've been able to connect this community. And I'm excited to listen to everyone's stories. So thank you for doing all this hard work.
Oh, of course. Couldn't imagine doing anything else. Plus, I can't wait for people to see the photos of your of the clitoris and the flowers.
Everyone gets to see my clitoris. Yes. That's exciting. That'll make everyone definitely go to the landing page.
Yeah. Yep. Well, thank you so much, Shannon.
All right. Thank you, Catherine.
This episode of She Speaks is brought to you by our amazing partners at First Horizon Bank. She Speaks is produced, edited, and scored by the very talented Travis Tench at Oak Hill Audio. If you loved the episode you just heard and want to support Let Her Speak's mission of elevating real women's stories, don't forget to follow, subscribe, and share at Let Her Speak USA. Together, we will make our voices heard.